Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And Dr. Lopkin, last time we did the podcast, we were in the midst of the Charlie Kirk assassination. At that point, it was an attempt. Your thoughts? And that's a lot there, but some initial thoughts.
Yeah, this has been a growing story that I'll be honest, I did not see the repercussions coming.
Agreed. Me as well.
I was completely blindsided by this. For those of you who listened last week, we reported on the shooting. As we wrapped up the podcast, he had been sent to the hospital. Obviously, we now know the wound was fatal. He did pass away. There was a manhunt that went on for 3 days before they finally got the person who did it. Tyler Anderson, I think his last name is.
Yes.
But the outpouring has been absolutely amazing. In the first 24 hours after his death, social media was inundated with people not just posting tributes or posting in memoriam, but they were posting photos of themselves wearing t-shirts that said this, others with handmade signs, all saying, "I am Charlie Kirk." Charlie Kirk, within hours of the assassination, became a martyr. This has been the largest mobilization of the conservative community, not just in America, but around the world, possibly ever.
That's interesting. Shed some more light about ever, because I do agree with you 100%. I thought there'd be the usual repercussions, one side taking the other. But I agree with you. I'm shocked, amazed at how deep and how widespread and how impactful it is. Yes, and you mentioned social media. The flip side is you had members on the left basically celebrating, didn't you?
You did, but unlike most other times where the right-left divide has become exacerbated, to say the least, you're having a massive repercussion against the left, and not just by people on the right. This isn't about conservatives boycotting liberal media or liberal companies or things. It's the companies themselves. MSNBC very quickly fired Matthew Dodd for his on-the-air comments about Charlie
Which
Kirk.
were atrocious.
Yes, they were. The Washington Post fired a columnist because of not what they wrote in the paper, but what they posted on social media. You have had companies across the spectrum. The Carolina Panthers fired people. Office Depot fired someone. Now,
but isn't it a little bit of covering your ass? I mean, who created, not entirely, but the media has a large share of the guilt for you, along with the Democratic Party and the left, Antifa, all that. Hitler. I mean, creating an environment. And now
yes.
I think they're trying to cover their ass.
Well, they're definitely trying to cover their ass, but they also realize that there are legal ramifications. If this can be proven in court that they held some responsibility, and all of that is going to be dependent on what comes out during the criminal trial. But if Anderson starts talking about, well, media convinced me that Trump was Hitler and Charlie Kirk had to be stopped, there are some major legal ramifications. And you're starting to see the blowback with, of all places, CNN. Now, CNN did their usual horrible job covering the story. Not because it was slanted in any direction, it was just poorly done. But
An incompetence, yes.
CNN, according to some sources, told their on-air talent point blank they were not permitted to disparage Charlie Kirk. And this was proactive on their part. It wasn't like MSNBC had to react, like the Washington Post had to react to what had already, happened. CNN came out and said, "No, we're stopping this before it starts." And again, it's not just media. You had Office Depot had not even an executive. This was somebody that worked at one of their stores. Someone came in to have a sign printed for a Charlie Kirk vigil, and he refused to print the sign, and Office Depot fired him for it. So you are seeing a 180 shift in what we've been referring to for the last several years as cancel culture.
Interesting. Yes. So you think it's going to have not just temporary, but far-reaching, longer-term ramifications? I think you're correct.
I think it can. I hope, actually, in terms of cancel culture, that it doesn't. This was something the left should never have embraced. The right certainly shouldn't be embracing cancel culture. And ironically, the one person who would stand up and say, no, they have the right to be heard and not canceled, would have been Charlie Kirk.
This is a very difficult question for you, Dr. Lopkin, but I think you can do a better job than I can at this point. If you can, try to articulate the domestic and international ramifications as you see it. Again, I think it also would be interesting to give our listeners a little bit of your understanding or your impression about when it first happened, what was your mindset? What did you envision? And as it's unfolded over the last week, where is it now and where do you see it going? A lot there, but you're the doctor.
Yeah, when the news first broke, I expected a lot of hand-wringing on the right, a lot of, I expected, certainly the tributes were not unexpected. First of all, aside from the usual platitudes when somebody is killed, you also have to remember that among conservative media and conservative politicians, they all knew Charlie Kirk. This was personal for them.
Yes, as it relates to the five, maybe you can shed it. Usually there's banter between Jessica Turloff and others. It was heated. It was personal. There were swear words. She was almost crying. Don't feel
It,
sorry for her, but your thoughts.
yeah, the incident on the 5 honestly was uh,
I've never
uh,
seen that.
I have. It's been made a mountain out of a molehill. First of all, this was not when it first happened. This was a week later, because for some reason during the week that this all happened last week, going through I think to Monday, Jessica Tarloff was not on the show. I don't know if one
Mhm.
thing had anything to do with the other, or if she just had a vacation scheduled, but she was not on the show. So this week, when she came back, she started essentially insulting the right, saying, well, you're making such a big deal about this. Where were you when this left wing person was killed? And Gutfeld went off on her, and rightly so. Now, this is not the first time that he's
But
done
not with
this.
this, not with this kind of unbridled emotion.
No,
I've
because
seen him go back and
this
forth.
was
It's almost
personal.
play acting. Yeah, exactly.
Right, but this was
Yep,
well, no,
I agree.
I've seen him go off where it was very clear it was not play acting. It's happened on occasion, and you also have to remember that Fox has, for periods of time in the past, removed Tarloff from the show because of her comments. So it's not. This is not an unusual occurrence, but for Gutfeld, this was more personal. This was someone he knew. This was someone a lot of the media knew. Charlie Kirk was on Fox News frequently. So there was this personal aspect, and I expected that. What I did not expect was the conservative outpouring, and this was historic. And it was, I hesitate to say a sequel, but the last time I've seen something like this was 2015. And for those of you who don't know what I'm referring to, when the French magazine Charlie Hebdo published a cartoon that made fun of
Hmm.
the Prophet Muhammad, and had Muhammad in an illustration. In the Muslim religion, you are not allowed to have images of Muhammad, and a radical extremist Muslim shot 12 members of the Charlie Hebdo staff. And
Hmm.
around the world, the voices went up, the signs went up that said, Je suis Charlie. I am Charlie. And this was all about saying, no, this is a free speech issue. We are standing up for him. Well, around the world, after Charlie Kirk was killed, Je suis Charlie signs started showing up during protests in the UK, in France, in South Korea. This was an amazing international show saying, no, this has to stop. The status quo cannot stand. And here you had I am Charlie Kirk, people repeating it on social media, posting videos. So many people, both who have been politically active and who haven't, swearing that they are going to pick up where Charlie Kirk left off. Turning
Can
Point,
they?
Turning
Because
Point
his
USA.
impact his impact on the election was huge.
Well,
Maybe
listen to this.
responsible for Trump being
Yes,
elected. Go ahead.
to a certain extent, he was responsible. He and there were a couple of other key persons that also you could say that they're responsible for Trump being elected. But Turning Point USA has chapters on 3,800 college campuses. Since the assassination, they have received, at the last announcement, it may be more than this, requests for approximately 35,000 new chapters. That's more than tenfold what Turning Point was able to do before. They set records in fundraising. You are seeing lifelong Democrats switch their political affiliation. Registration for Democrats is now down. Registration for Republicans is now up. People have decided enough is enough. And this goes a lot to what's been going on in general, where everybody has seen the lies that the Democrats have been saying for the last 10 years. You know, oh, Biden's at the top of his game. Oh, Georgia is Jim Crow 2.0. You know, all of this stuff. People now are looking at the Democratic Party going, no, this is your fault. You have been inciting riots. And on a separate note, but the timing on this couldn't have been better. Yesterday, Joe Manchin's new book came out.
Is it a coloring book?
Oh, no. The book rips to shreds the Democratic Party, specifically Obama, Biden, Schumer. And he says point blank, America needed the Republicans to win the Senate in the 2024 election to stop the Democrats' quest for, quote, raw political power.
I think that's extremely interesting because you look, isn't there an inflection point? Manchin, I know he's technically an independent, but that's neither here nor there. Could it be a cleansing of the radical socialist, radical Democratic Party? Or is it already baked in? There's a recent poll that a majority of Democrats now believe in communism. So the point is it, no, hold on, before you answer, is it just maybe Manchin's and others, but the center mass is still increasingly radical and capable of embracing and promoting violence? That's the quintessential question. Is there going to be a cleansing, or is it too far gone?
I think ultimately there will be a cleansing. I don't think it's happening anytime soon. The Democratic Party seems to be doubling down on the radical left. I think what's going to decide the fate of the Democratic Party, whether they go fully to the left or if they start moving back to the center where they should be, is going to end up being, can Charlie Kirk's assassination flip the New York City mayoral election in November? If Mondavi wins, the communist, socialist, radical left have cemented their position as the party leadership.
May I interject one thing before you go on?
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, Doctor. I'll throw a caveat into that. I think you also have to throw in the midterms. Mm-hmm. If the unusual cast of character, you know, that's huge. If you get a double, okay, if you get Mondani losing, Democrats losing in the midterm, then the cleansing starts. If it's a double victory, then it continues on the path of radicalization.
Actually, I don't think a Democratic victory in the midterms is going to be a factor in it, because historically,
I know that, but history's history. I think the Democrats are on the ropes. If they pull it off, it could quell them and getting into a false sense of security. I think if they lose, my point is, because you're right, historically it always happens, but if it goes against historical trends, which a lot of polls, very good polls like Rasmussen point to, then I think there could be a real comeuppance.
Yeah, if the Democrats lose in the midterms, then It's over. It's at least you're going to see a cleansing, but I don't know which way that cleansing is going to go. At that point, it's
Agreed.
going to depend on who's got more power within the party. If the Democrats win in the midterms and more communist radical left take position, then clearly they're going to take over the party. If the center of the party can hold off those those radicals, because remember, the big fight there is going to be in the primaries, and there are a lot of primaries that are going to be going on between the more center right and the radical left. So I think the primaries are actually going to tell us more about the future of the Democratic Party than the actual midterm elections will.
Exceptional. I agree with that 100%. But I think we both agree that it is definitely an inflection point in terms of the New York mayoral race and the midterms.
Yes,
Plus
it's
the Charlie Kirk, all woven together.
Yeah, it's definitely an inflection point. I mean, you're seeing more and more folks back away from Joe Biden. I mean, again, we have Manchin going off on Biden in his book. Kamala Harris, in her recent book, said, yes, it was a mistake to allow Joe to run for a second term. Pete Buttigieg recently made comments saying, yes, it was a mistake to allow Joe to run for a second time. He should have pulled out earlier. Why are they doing this? Because, of course, they're trying to protect their careers. And anybody.
Wait a second. I have to interject one thing on that. I agree with you. Yes, absolutely. But it's also cover your ass and total lack of courage. Where were they when the country needed them?
Right.
If Biden ever got reelected, we would be screwed. And that's not partisan politics. That's anyone with an IQ above 80. We would be effed. Could be a nuclear war. The guy was blown out.
Well, that also goes back to what we were talking about last week on the international stage. Remember, in the last week, or week and a half now, Russian drones have invaded NATO territory twice, once in Poland last week, and since then in Romania. Can you imagine if Biden was at the helm to deal with potential invasions of NATO countries? We are legally obligated to help defend them. It's part of the NATO agreement. Donald Trump
but you also need some nuances. Meaning, if you have someone with a brain, yes. In other words, I have no faith in either Kamala or him. I think they would just go black and white and get us into World War III. I think, with someone, not just Trump, anyone with a brain, cooler heads could possibly prevail. And I will add one more thing before you go on, is that with Kamala, because just like Hillary, because she had something to prove, she might have been more dangerous in a international military struggle or conflict.
That's very possible. I think that Trump actually did the right thing. He stated point blank, and he did this publicly, that he is more than happy to help protect NATO, and to protect Europe. But Europe needs to stop buying oil from Russia. They are literally funding their own demise. So
I would have actually been. Wait, was he clear on? Because Trump should say, like you said, we'll help NATO if and only if there is no gray area. Stop immediately.
No, he was.
It's our ass on the line.
Yeah, he was very clear about that.
Good. You think Biden would have done that? I doubt that very much.
Excuse me. We already know what Biden would have done because he did it. He stood up in front of the American people and said, a minor incursion is okay.
that was one for the record books. I know we really want to centered on Charlie Kirk, and that's what we're going to do. But just 30 seconds. Is he maybe the most inconsequential president in modern history? Like almost like a footnote.
Modern history, yes. All of history, I still have to give that title to William Henry Harrison.
I gotcha.
He was only in office 30 days because of his own stupidity. So,
yeah, he still might have done more than Biden. Anyway, so in closing, tell us where you think this movement is going. First question would be, or analysis would be, youth movement. It was almost a 50-50 split during the 2024 election. Never happened before. Close with Reagan, but never even as close as it was with only 3-point differential. Where do you see the youth movement still continuing the momentum on the right, or you think without Charlie, it's going to start fizzling?
Oh, no, I think it's going to pick up steam on the right, because comments that we've heard from college students, they're actually looking at this as an attack on them. Charlie Kirk was one of them. He was on the college campuses. And unlike so many provocateurs on both sides, the left and the right, Charlie gave the mic to the opposition. He let them talk. He let them make whatever points they wanted to make. And then, of course, he eviscerated them with facts. And I think the best thing that I've heard so far is that right now, the right and the left both want to turn the country red. The left wants it to run red with blood, and the right wants it to run red with votes. And that is the major difference.
And that's a huge, and that's not just hyperbole. That is, I mean, again, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but I mean, if you had thousands of times, millions, left-wing media, political operatives, Hitler, threat to democracy. I mean, these words cannot. If you have someone that's a little imbalanced, what the heck do you think's going to happen? And you give people a free pass. Who wouldn't kill Hitler? Of course you'd kill Hitler.
Here's the thing, though. The backlash has been so widespread. And I think the ultimate example is Stephen King. Stephen King made disparaging comments about Charlie Kirk right after the assassination. And then he apologized and pulled it down. And social media went, no, you don't get to just apologize for this. We know this is what you meant. Bookstores pulled his books from being on sale. This past weekend, a Stephen King-based movie debuted in the theaters and bombed. He is now facing the backlash of that. Blue Sky, the social media platform that was literally formed for the purpose of giving the radical left somewhere to go instead of X, when Elon Musk said he wasn't going to put up with them, they started pulling people's accounts going, all right, you've gone too far.
Interesting. Now, one other question on this segment. The firing, we talked about the media, but it's beyond the media. You talked about Staples. I think there's over 100 teachers fired. I mean, so it's a different reality now, isn't it? You could get away with that 6 months ago. You could post anything you want. You may be called a weirdo on right-wing media or platforms, but you'd keep your job. Those days might be over.
Yeah, so far there have been over 900 people fired because of making negative comments about Charlie Kirk after the assassination. And ironically, one person was suspended, and she quit her position. She was news anchor at the ABC affiliate in Illinois, one of them, ABC 20, was suspended for airing a tribute to Charlie Kirk. And she went on social media and she said, I've been suspended because of a nonpartisan tribute to Charlie Kirk, and effective immediately, I have resigned. So
Fantastic.
you are still seeing people, that left-wing mentality going, oh no, we can't, we have to stop this. But I think the train has left the station at this point. And more importantly, you're seeing people for who they really are. Ilhan Omar, with
Oh,
all of
God.
these folks being fired, is all of a sudden fighting for freedom of speech, where 2.5 years ago, she was on the cutting edge of cancel culture, saying, no, these people have to be stopped. They can't be allowed to say this. Now, all of a sudden, she's fighting for free speech.
Shocking. Well, Dr. Lopkin, this situation certainly has a lot of legs. I do agree with you 100%. Did I think it was going to be impactful? Yes, but not to the scale that we're witnessing a week later. But we're back next week to talk about this and other things in the news, and our listeners can contribute to the conversation, can't they?
Yes, let us know what you want to hear about. What issues matter to you? Go to xvadio.com/connect. Send us a message there. You can also message us from the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. And of course, you can hear every episode of Carnivore Bites, as well as the rest of the Xvadio podcast network at xvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. See you next week.
We'll see you then.